All right, we're going to keep on this lightning pace. So we've covered what is probably the obvious, the character, the characteristics of the candidate, degrees, credentials, clinical, non-clinical experiences. But aside from all of that, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to get to the heart of the matter. What is the big mystery of recruitment that you're really looking for that makes someone stand out, that you want to bring to an organization? You've done this sourcing. You've been on LinkedIn. You're stalking all these candidates, and you're thinking, this is the person or the persons that I'm going to bring to the talent team at the organization. What is really discussed in the room where that decision gets made, and what's that secret conversation?
Say it's true. They got a message from the action man. Hope you're happy too.
Hello and welcome to the Fire Chief Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the Chief Medical Officer. I'm your host, Lee Scheinbart, and this podcast brings you the hottest and most crucial conversations in healthcare and physician leadership. Today's guest on the show is only the fourth non-CMO on this program, but she may be the most important non-medical individual we have ever invited to the show. Our guest today may be the one who changes your career path, and you don't even know it yet. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and briefly living in Brussels, Belgium during her junior high years, and later earning her undergraduate degree at Texas Christian University, Rebecca Kapphahn, the vice president and senior client partner at Furst Group, joins us with nearly 2 decades of physician leadership recruitment to her credit. Furst Group, along with New Brick Partners from the companies of MPI, delivers comprehensive healthcare executive talent solutions to organizations across the healthcare ecosystem. For more than 40 years, clients have relied on them for executive search, physician leadership development, succession planning, accelerated team performance, and transition support. Their scientific methodology and holistic approach ensures seamless continuity in attracting, developing, retaining, and engaging leaders for sustainable organizational success. And before we welcome our guest a little bit further, in addition to giving you a chance to hear a few things from Rebecca that might forever change your career path, I have something else special for the listeners. I'm going to share a small secret with all of you late in the program, so stay tuned, pay attention until later in the show. And this is something I've never revealed on this show, and certainly not beyond a few of my closest colleagues. Okay, so today Rebecca has agreed to let us peek behind the curtain into the world of physician executive recruitment. So Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Wonderful, Lee. Thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be here. Physician executive leadership is a passion area of mine. Been doing this, as you mentioned, for 20 plus years. And it's a real privilege to be able to pass on our gifts and our knowledge of helping leaders find that next opportunity. So thank you.
You're welcome. I just hope you're not second guessing your decision to join the show. I've put out that big, bold claim about your professional work, and you're going to give us a peek, and hopefully that will suffice. But any trade secrets that you give away will be of your own free will and without coercion, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it is a little bit of a science, but it's also a little bit of an art in executive recruitment.
I totally agree with that. Science and art. But that's, sounds like medicine, really.
Yeah, it does. 100%.
Well, let's start with a little slice of the background. And in particular, how did you begin to gravitate towards physician leadership recruitment? And as you've indicated, this fills your bucket, this motivates you. But what was that magnetism all about?
Yeah. So it's funny. I have 2 daughters, and I joke with them that I never went to college thinking that I would become a recruiter. You just kind of fall into the industry. And my values align very much with healthcare recruiting as it relates to really being able to have an impact. I didn't know how I was going to do that at 22 years old, but I landed into the locum tenens route. And then transitioned into executive search. And that's where I really hit my passion. I have a curiosity around what makes people tick, if you will. I really believe that we're all wired differently. Our past, growing up, right? Our education, our lived experiences, all really do create and compile who we are and our tendencies. But it doesn't mean that that's our destiny. And so I love the growth that's associated with leadership. And I love the volume or that the value a physician has at the table to represent the providers and what's best for medicine for patients. So that's where I cut my teeth in my prior firm, where I was at for 16 years. They had a strong presence in physician recruiting and physician leadership. And so it just seemed to match well. And so I've continued that into my role here at Furst Group as well.
So that is a great origin story, as I like to call them. And your thinking around what makes people tick is so incredibly important, not just in the selection and the recruitment and the placement and making that fit, but it's also an important skill set that young physician executives need to learn. I'll be very blunt. In medical school, we are not taught the phrases you just said. What makes people tick? What we're taught is what is broken. In other words, why is the lung not working right? What's wrong with the heart? And not necessarily their personality. And although I think in modern times, as we talk about things like social determinants of health, we have a growing awareness, but it is a skill set. And I think it's wonderful that you have tapped into that and understand that. And that will make you a better recruiter when you're placing executives with companies. Would you agree with that?
100%, Lee, 100%. And, we talk about it in our firm that there are cultural fits, right? Individuals who fit within the current environment today, but also really looking for a cultural contributor. So someone who still fits and aligns with the values, but are bringing the competencies and creating policies or processes to be able to change behavior. Healthcare needs disruptors, and they need appropriate physician disruptors, leaders, to be able to come in and help move the needle, especially with the pressures and dynamics, the geopolitical environment. It's just a lot going on right now. And so the clinical credibility is always going to be paramount with CMOs, but it's the soft skills, the intangible skills to be able to influence, to be able to collaborate, be able to inspire and engage are really the differentiators that I'm finding. And when I'm assessing candidates, it's not just about what you've done, but it's how you've approached those challenges and, what's the impact you then had. So
Rebecca, we are way past peeking behind the curtain. We have totally learned some incredible, like rule number one, be a contributor to the organization. That's what you look for. That's what the organization's. Be a little bit of a disruptor, right? Like come in to shake things up, not in a bad way, but the world is being shook up by external factors, and the organizations have to constantly realign. So the physician executive has to be somewhat in sync with that. It's not like the perfectly controlled operating room for appropriate reasons. It's perfectly controlled. But when you're in an executive meeting or you're making a strategic plan, it's a little bit more ambiguous, right? Yeah.
100%. And it's fascinating too, Lee, because as we're assessing candidates or as candidates are assessing opportunities, I think there's really two things. It's one, do you align with their values, right? Is the impact that they're having where you want to be able to contribute to? But second of all, it's their pace of change. And so that's where I find a lot of that nuance of that cultural contributor of, is the pace of change, does that align with your skill sets and your competencies? Because if there's a mismatch, then that's when there can be derailers, right, that are occurring. So
one of the things that happened on this show a while back is I began to refer to the CMO has two potential definitions beyond chief medical officer. Some organizations make you the chief metrics officer, particularly as it relates to physicians. It is a little pejorative on my part, but in fact, that's what some organizations are focused on. The other one more recently that's come up, and it's come up more than once, is the change management officer. And again, mostly on the physician side. There's plenty of other executive leaders to work on the rest of the workforce in the organization. But the physician leader has to understand change management, be willing to be part of that, and be skilled to lead that, right?
Yeah. Agreed, 100%. I mean, that's ultimately to be able to inspire vision, get folks behind you, but then at the same time, it's execution, right? And it's fascinating that you share that. I had a CMO recruitment to where there was significant disruption within the market. It was a mixed medical staff. There was concerns with the direction of the organization. There was lack of engagement. So to your point, they were looking for a change agent, someone that would inspire change, be transformative, create alignment within that environment. And we found a great candidate. He's still at the organization 7-8 years later, which is great. But then I had another recruitment CMO to where it was very much focused on the quality and the safety aspects of it, because they were performing very well, but they actually wanted to be, kind of the driver of that within healthcare and social determinants of health. So to your point, it's understanding where's the organization in their journey and what are the priorities and competencies that they're looking for. So I love that.
Yeah. And just as a side note, we have an examination occurring at the medical school today. So the students are thinking about molecules and mitochondria. And unfortunately, we have not yet taught alignment and strategic thinking. So we'll get there. It's just going to take us a while.
Yeah. 100%. You love it.
Okay. So let's talk about, if there's a listener out there who has determined that his or her next move is to become a chief medical officer, and they're looking around at their local geography, the organization that they're working with, and there's no clear-cut opportunity to go up the ladder or that pyramid in that organization, but this is a career path that they want. How does that person make it known to your ecosystem or anybody else's? I want to be a CMO, but I don't even know how do I begin that journey outside of my neighborhood?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question. So, and I would say this would apply even to CMOs that are currently CMOs that are maybe looking for that next level.
Okay, let's hear all about this. Yes.
Yeah, for your listeners that are current CMOs as well. So the first and foremost thing is I would say start looking when you're happy, when you're content, things are going pretty well, but you have the itch. You have the itch to want to do a little bit more, do something a little bit different. Because I share this because then you'll be running to something versus running away from something, and you won't make, or hopefully won't be making an emotional decision, right? It'll be for the right reason. So that's what I share with folks. Second is to reflect. What do you love about your current role today? What do you want to change? What do you love about your organization or culture that you would want to carry forward with you? And what might you hope to leave behind, if that makes sense? And so after that, then I would really identify what is that pathway, what are the priorities in your skill set. So once you have the reflection and you have a pathway, or at least the guardrails of what you're looking for, then first I would reach out to your network, but be confidential, keep it small, and let them know, hey, I'm thinking about making a change. Is there any change going on in your organization? Do you anticipate any upcoming retirements, things like that? Could you provide a warm introduction to maybe your CHRO or maybe your CEO or things like that? So you can use your network and ask them how they found their position. Kind of what was their process? What recommendations do they have? But I caution to keep the circle small because you want to, You want to preserve your current position. You don't want your organization to know that you're actively looking. That gets pretty messy. So that's the first thing. Second is to update your resume and LinkedIn. I know some physician executives are not real big users on LinkedIn, but it's really a phenomenal resource because firms like Furst Group, as well as employers, will first and foremost go to your LinkedIn bio. So they're going to want to look at what has been your career, what have been your accomplishments, to really build that out. And honestly, I'm happy for anybody that's looking, shoot me an email. I'm happy to look at your resume, look at your LinkedIn, and just pass on the gift of experience just to help set you up for success. I do that a lot with candidates that are in transition. But it really is important to make sure that you're reflecting your accomplishments and having CMO responsibility keywords in there. In the feature section, highlight if you have been on a podcast, if you have written a book on physician leadership or a paper presented in your society as well. So those are really great avenues. And then I would also share too, by connecting with other folks on LinkedIn is another great way. Follow organizations that you have an interest in. You can definitely look on organizations' websites for, they'll post positions there. But in this day and age, I'm finding candidates are sharing with me that it is harder to get even recognized, right? There's to be looked at. And part of this is AI that is looking at words and kind of screening out folks before they even get to like the hiring leader or the talent acquisition. So making sure your letter of interest or your CV is correlating words that align with the job description, as well as maybe values for that organization. So that's kind of one part. And then the other part is reaching out to folks like me to get to know us, right?
Well,
have conversations.
So we're now like at rule 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 is call Rebecca, email Rebecca, and we'll give you that contact information at the end of the show. So, guys, we could probably wrap this show up. You just heard everything we have a lot more to get into, so stay tuned. But, I think your comment about the itch is so incredibly important. And I was taught by someone from St. Louis, not connected to Furst Group or New Brick Partners. When I was making a shift in my career, was I running away from something or was I running towards something? And I never had that question asked of me in my professional career. And so I really like the component, as goofy as it may sound, wait for the itch and then go see how you scratch that itch, because I do think that it makes a huge difference in terms of the value that you're going to bring, the contributions. Because if you're running away from something, you may not really have what the organization is looking for. So very, very valuable. The other comment I want to react to is LinkedIn. And, there was a time when it was frowned upon that physicians would advertise in the yellow pages, take out ads in the news. Of course, none of my young listeners know what I mean when I say the yellow pages. But it used to be this big, thick phone book, and inside you could advertise in the yellow pages. That physicians, it was beneath them. It was unprofessional to advertise their availability, their services, their office, so on and so forth. Now, I think we've moved well past that, but I would say that when I went from clinical practice to the executive management team, of course, everyone said, "Oh, Lee, you're on the dark side now." And then when I started using LinkedIn, they're like, "You're on the dark, dark side." Like, what are you doing on LinkedIn? And I have to tell the listeners, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're not on LinkedIn. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. If you are expanding your network and you want to be a career executive, that is the social media that you have to participate with. And if you do not do it, it is the sin of omission, and you do it at your own peril. And I am not a fan of the mental neurobiological behaviors of social media, but this is the conditions of our world today, and you must pay attention. And I'm seeing you must be in agreement with this.
I am 100% in agreement. I mean, and that's what we use on a day-to-day basis, right? That's how
incredible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we launch a recruitment, we set it up for success to, as we talked about, to ensure that we understand the competencies and where the organization is in their journey. What are they looking for? And then we will create a target list. We don't boil the ocean at Furst Group. We're really looking at who's the right leader that's going to do this. And so we target like organizations, similar size, scope, that type of thing. But then it's LinkedIn to be able to communicate and really look at the career trajectory of that individual, because past experience will most likely dictate future success. And so it's really looking at that and seeing the trajectory of leadership.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. So let's now move to trajectory. This is important for many listeners. This is a confusing time for people who are attempting to move into these positions that we're talking about. And it's a very common question when I speak with chief medical officers around the country. What title or degrees are valued by the systems? And we can come back to things like your contribution, your ability to have those soft skills, all of those executive tools. But are there titles that systems look at?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So I would say, kind of to start with, looking at that trajectory from maybe a medical director over a department or a functional area, looking at a chief of staff or a section chief, an associate CMO, maybe a service line leadership role. Those type of leadership positions would provide you access to clinical operations, quality, safety, faculty management, informally or hopefully formally, right? To be able to manage providers, recruit providers, work cross-functionally to understand the flow and the access as well. So really taking those steps of progressive leadership roles, more responsibility, whether it's in your department or then stepping outside your department, is really going to position you for greater success. The academic credentials can be important for sure. And I would say the more progressive or the larger scope of responsibility and the more P&L responsibility a leader will have, most likely that MBA is going to be more important to a hiring leader.
So time out for the listeners who have not yet thought about an MBA. They may not know what P&L is. So what's P&L?
Oh yeah, profit and loss.
Profit and loss. Healthcare, profit and loss. What a dichotomy. Okay, so let's talk about the MBA. So if you are going to be a clinical operating officer, you've learned as you've gone up in these various roles a lot about operations, particularly clinical operations. But you may never want to be a CMO. You want to be a chief clinical officer, for example. Mm-hmm. Does an MBA seem to be valuable to the recruiting firm and to the organization, or not necessarily, or it's all over the board?
It's all over the board.
Okay.
And I would say there's different programs out there, as I'm sure you know, but for the listeners, there's MBA if you're looking to expand your finance, your business acumen, your marketing acquisition. So if you're looking to step into a role that does have more of the business functional areas that you want to round out those competencies, that's a great avenue. There's also Masters of Medical Management, which is strictly for physician executive leaders, that has the business as well as the leadership competencies and some of that, clinical functionality leadership as well. If you're looking to go in chief clinical officer and focusing on that social determinants of health or managed care population health, Masters of Public Health could be, or Masters of Healthcare Administration could be of value too. So to your point, Lee, you need to understand what is it that you're wanting to accomplish and how will the degree then benefit you? Because don't just get a degree to get a degree. Most of my recruitments, it's nice to have. It's a very nice to have. But I love when my clients give me the freedom to say, let me bring the right leader to you, whether they have an MBA behind their MD or not. So that's my
while I pointed at you, which is it's not a nice thing to do in an office setting, and I apologize.
No, it's like a fist bump, right?
It was a virtual fist bump, but I was pointing with my finger. So I should have just had that light bulb, that little cartoon, because the big light bulb just went like super wattage brilliant on me when you were talking. For the first time in my life, I will admit, and this is not the secret that I'm going to reveal later, is that in an interview outside of your organization where somebody doesn't know you, it is very plausible, whether it's the recruitment team, the talent management team, or inside the organization. So why did you get that MBA at Johnson State? I thought I needed it for the job. No. Why did you get, same question, why did you get the MMM or the MPH? And here's what I would suggest to my listeners.
Yeah.
Define what you want in your future role and align the degree to the role. So if you want to be a CEO, it probably makes a difference whether you get an MBA. And as one of our guests a while back told us, get the right MBA from the right institution to become an organizational executive that drives value, profit, change management, marketing, strategy. If you're just getting an MBA to be a chief medical officer and all you ever want to do is patient satisfaction, probably not the right degree.
Right.
And it would be one of the others that we've talked about. If you are a quality and safety hound, probably an MPH or an MMM is something you probably, and there are other quality-based credentials and degrees you could get. So this has been worth its weight in gold. And I want to know if you agree with some of this off-the-cuff thinking that I'm doing.
100%. There's even certifications like NAEQ for quality, to get a certification through them for leadership and administration. So 100%. And to your point too, these programs, an MBA program may look very different, or I would say it does look very different across institutions. Some are industry agnostic. So you're there with leaders from engineering companies, right? Or finance or supply chain companies. I mean, all across the board. Then there are other ones that are strictly within healthcare, but they're agnostic when it comes to positions. So you're with CEOs, vice president supply chain, and CFOs as well, other physician leaders. And then there are physician leadership cohorts as well that allow you to provide that peer group. There's really, again, to your point, what is the value it will bring to you as you progress in your career? And then research those programs. Talk to your colleagues again. Research and see different tracks of physician leaders and what degrees they may have decided to pursue.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to do a little lightning round activity here. We're going to do some sort of short questions looking for short answers. And first I have to ask, are you familiar with one of my favorite organizations, the American Association for Physician Leadership?
Yes, 100%. It's an excellent organization.
Okay. So, lightning round, do the experiences and certifications and credentials through AAPL make a difference to you and your team?
Yes, they do. They show a commitment to development of executive leadership. They are rigorous programs from my understanding. So it really does show that excellence and pursuit of a commitment to executive leadership.
Yep.
So,
Rule number 12, demonstrate your commitment to your own physician leadership development. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Next question. What type of clinical experience generally is sought by a system, by an organization? In other words, is it possible to quickly become a chief medical officer soon after med school and residency, or do they look for that 5, 10, 15, 20 year of clinical, or again, is it all over the board?
I would say typically at least 5 to 7 years of clinical practice. You got to earn the street cred, first and foremost as a physician. And then you also, it takes time, right? So you need the progressive leadership roles to learn that art of leadership, and mistakes, lessons learned, successes, things like that. So if you're right out of residency and you got the itch as a chief resident, look how you can contribute. There are absolutely ways of projects, being on the medical staff, just taking on more responsibilities. But you have to advocate for your organization. If they don't know that that's potentially a pathway that you want to go, you need to speak up and make sure your leadership, who you report to, understands that and is keeping an eye out for you as far as opportunities.
All right. Rule 14A is you got to have the clinical street cred. 14B is you got to have the organizational leadership cred. So a lot of credibility required. Okay. So in your experience, and I know you have worked with many, many organizations, what is your general feeling about whether they want to have the candidate or the person in the next CMO role continue to see patients or not, have a foot in the clinical world or not? What's been your experience?
So this is one of the first questions I get from candidates.
From the candidates, you get this?
From candidates, I get this. And it varies. I will say it varies based off of the organization and what is their culture. I would also say it varies based off of the level of an organization or the level of the scope of the position. So, and it depends upon the candidate's preference, to be honest with you. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I know a CMO for a $4 billion region. They have at least 7, if not more, hospitals as part of that region. This individual does not have a panel of patients that they keep, but does round on, maybe a monthly or a quarterly basis. It's important to him to be able to live in the trenches again, right? Be walking peer to peer, being able to understand workflow. How are physicians working with multidisciplinary teams or APPs? What is the vibe, right, of what's going on within the hospital? And so that's very important for him, as well as the street cred to still be there. And he learns, and he shared this with me, that he has learned maybe some things that folks aren't telling, right? So being able to hear firsthand, you're experiencing maybe things that aren't being brought up, or maybe they're brought up, but then they're not brought to the right level as well. So there's definitely value in that. However, I do have another CMO that I recently placed who's phenomenal. He doesn't practice clinically, but he has had an immediate impact in that organization, but has to be more intentional in ensuring that he is creating that credibility and engaging and still rounding, even though he might not be seen, touching a patient, he still has to be present in the clinical round.
So you sound like a lawyer, Miss Rebecca, because your answer, and I have some of my best friends are lawyers, Rebecca. It depends. And again, I think this is exceptionally insightful and the light bulb moment again for me. So we're going to put the physician's desire to the side for a second, but the organizational desire, again, really depends on their situation. What are they trying to achieve? Better physician engagement or alignment? Are they trying to learn things that are not being spoken out loud, et cetera, et cetera? Now, those are the soft skills a physician leader can bring, which is listening, understanding, open lines of communication. You don't necessarily, in my own opinion, have to be elbow to elbow in the EHR or in the OR or in the ED, because if you're good at the soft skills, you should be able to get that information without necessarily sharing their difficulties. That's just my personal opinion. The harder so if you are seeking a CMO role, listeners, I think you have to begin to understand what the organization needs from you. If they're saying, oh, no, it pays for some of your salary, that's an entirely different conversation. And yeah, at smaller institutions, 50-bed critical access hospitals, 100-bed, it may be true. That's one of the ways they pay for that position. But a larger system may be looking for other things. The physician has the bigger problem because it is the single most personal decision they ever make in their life to walk away, whether they're tired of it, getting too old to do it, whatever the case may be. But walking away, there's just nothing that compares to that. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Okay, so thank you for that. All right, we're going to keep on this lightning pace. So we've covered what is probably the obvious, the character, the characteristics of the candidate, degrees, credentials, clinical, non-clinical experiences. But aside from all of that, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to get to the heart of the matter. What is the big mystery of recruitment that you're really looking for that makes someone stand out, that you want to bring to an organization? You've done this sourcing. You've been on LinkedIn. You're stalking all these candidates, and you're thinking, this is the person or the persons that I'm going to bring to the talent team at the organization. What is really discussed in the room where that decision gets made, and what's that secret conversation?
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Crickets. I got crickets.
Yes. Look, for me, in my opinion, they have to be a good human. At the end of the day, I love the searches where I fall in love with my candidates, and there's so many good choices. They could go any way. That recently happened, but I had 3 different candidates that had different leadership competencies, that it was hard for the organization to say, we could have a win with any one of these 3. But it has to do with our pace of change of where we're at today is the reason why they selected that one individual. So I would say one of the main things is I need candidates to connect with the why. Why with this organization? Why with this position? Why with the impact that you want to bring? And I think that brings their most authentic self in alignment with that my organization that I'm recruiting for and this leadership position. They have to have EQ, and that's hard. EQ is that's the secret sauce that doesn't have a clear pathway, Lee. But that is the number one requirement, is to be able to read a room, read and change your communication style based off of the audience, right? Being able to know when to pick your battles, know when and who you need to get on board first before maybe moving an initiative forward. So I would say that's the secret sauce. And as we talked about earlier, we all have certain tendencies and certain derailers, but that's not our destiny. So I'm going to give a plug in here for Newbrick Partners, and leadership development and coaching, executive coaching is a phenomenal resource for those individuals that want to create that, the 10% is what we talk about. It's that extra 10% of leadership competencies that you're working to refine. And whether it's through mentorship, professional coaching, or allyship, that's our critical component, I think, for leaders to continue to be on that trajectory of growth.
So that is beautiful. It's eloquent. It's elegant. Baked in there is that old phrase, je ne sais quoi. I don't really know. I mean, there's something that makes my heart go pitter patter over this individual. What they used to call it the Q quality, and we're not talking about charisma, and we're not talking about EQ. It's this unknown, intangible. But what you're also saying at the exact same time is it is something that can be learned, developed, practiced, executed, and it's leadership. It isn't being an expert in the metric. It's being a qualified leader of other people, and you bring your full, authentic leadership self to that picture. How does that sound?
100% with humility. I know.
100%.
Yeah. So fist bump me on that one.
Fist bump. Okay. So let's turn this around. So how should a candidate, and again, we're focused on CMOs, but a lot of physician executive roles we could be talking about. How do they examine and inspect the health system for fit and culture? So they're in that top 1 or 2 or 3, and they know they're getting to that finish line. Maybe they'll be asked to consider the role, but how does that person, from their point of view, your client and your organization, but how does the physician evaluate what is about to happen? You kind of hinted at it, but I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's two broad strokes. So I'm going to start with the obvious, and then I want to go to the not so obvious. But the first obvious one is really the vision and values. Really research that organization to understand what impact, again, like I said before, is they're making on an organization. From there, look at videos of the CEO. Look at videos of other leadership online to see how they represent. How they talk about the impact that they're making within the community, see if that aligns with you. And then the other thing is, too, through the interview process, are you finding consistent alignment of priorities and desired goals, first-year impact of the position that you're interviewing for? If you're finding dissension, if you're finding conflicting priorities, that would give me pause. So that's really important to make sure. When you go through the interview process, also ask questions of, how's feedback given? How do you engage the team? What are the strategic priorities for the organization? How does this position fit? How do you address conflict? What does that look like from a leadership team of when you give feedback to others? What does that feel like? If you're meeting with a peer, how do you interact with the CEO or the chief physician executive, whoever that hiring leader is? Tell me a little bit about how you experience that individual. So as much as they're interviewing you, you want to be interviewing them. The second piece is the candidate experience. You are not a commodity. there is a war on talent. So how are they treating you as a candidate? That's one of the things that Furst Group prides ourselves in as a differentiator in the market, is how our candidates feel. Their experience in the process should be equally as important as the client, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure this is a match. And if it's not, then it's better to know now, right? It's kind of like a marriage. It's better to know now that we're not aligned, and that we're not willing to give part of ourself to each other, to be successful for the organization and for the unit, if you will. So, that's why many of our candidates become our clients, because they feel that high touch communication. But at the end of the day, we have to still make sure that we are being, as I said, there are many times I fall in love with my candidates, but it's my client's decision. What's best interest for that client? So it's really making sure to keep the line of integrity.
I love this. This is great stuff. And I might have to borrow some of those phrases like the war on talent, and that you're not a commodity, because a lot of physicians do feel commoditized, and that's just everyday physicians, not people seeking a physician executive role. So I appreciate the accolade, and I think that's going to make our listeners feel a lot better about the universe when they are highly respected, recognized, and there's a need for talented individuals. But you also said something that was really quite, and I'm going to date myself here, awesome, because if you watch video, if the organization you're looking at has videos and video profiles and video messages, if you cannot see yourself articulating either the message or being on that video, it ain't going to be a great fit. If you say, I want to be on the next video at that organization, you have found your next home. I think that is so insightful. And again, like we talked about, physicians are not trained. Maybe this is changing as we speak, to advertise in Yellow Pages, to go on LinkedIn, to put their brand out there. And yet organizations do this, and the people that are really good at it do a really good job at it. And you have to be able to see yourself as that person. And that's another learned skill, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I love the word you use, brand. So LinkedIn is your brand for you, to be able to, again, recruiters, organizations will look at who you follow, what you like, what you comment on. So it is important to make sure that you are representing yourself as a brand.
Say that again. They will look for what your comments look like. Yes?
Yes, what your comments look
so
like.
So be careful what you say out there, people.
100%. It's just like any other social media platform. Every post, everything that goes into the universe is representing you.
Yeah.
So how do you want to do that?
And just in case people don't believe, Rebecca, I actually used an AI program to find out what my brand looked like based on all of my comments. It's fascinating. And I have begun to modulate some of my comments, and I will keep them to myself.
Yeah, I love that. But I love the curiosity of looking into that, right?
Yeah,
I think that's fun too. So
nobody really likes to look in the mirror, but I thought it was an important thing that I did. So, okay. So you hinted at New Brick Partners, but I want you to expand very briefly, because I think this is I didn't quite hear you say this. When I was looking, and when people have asked me, I said, if the organization will develop you, then you make sure you rank that in your rank order. To walk into a different place, a different city, a different area, and to be developed is really important. So tell us a little bit about the support structures, either from Furst Group and or New Brick, that once a leader is brought in, what is that development and that support look like?
Yeah, love that. So from Furst Group, with our executive search firm, we actually embed a New Brick leadership consultant in our process from the very start. So they're supporting us behind the scenes on really assessing competencies, leadership, that cultural contribution, behavioral interview questions, references, all that. So they're working alongside where it really is just integrated in the process. And then our infrastructure is towards the end of towards the end when we have three finalists. We use the Hogan Leadership Assessment. It's actually defensible. defendable in court. It's a fascinating tool, and I love it. But so we use that to go ahead and just help give another element, right? It's another tool. It doesn't rule candidates out, but it does help to say, how's this person going to show up? And how do we lay that then onto the original identifiable competencies that we had? So that's another great tool. And then once a candidate's selected, our consultant will debrief with them on their Hogan. We'll debrief with the hiring leader on their Hogan. Hopefully that hiring leader will take their own Hogan, so we can say, this is how you all match. Here's maybe where there's some opportunities for communication changes, right? And then from there, after that kind of three-way discussion, then we stay in close contact with our candidates. How are they doing? We're checking in with the hiring leader to make sure that they are having that continued professional development and coaching, whether it's internally or whether maybe we need to come alongside them a little bit more in that additional capacity as well. So some organizations have a strong leadership component or consulting or coaching internally. To your point, I would definitely ask those type of questions as, how are you going to onboard me type of thing, right? But that's how we leverage kind of that structure to make sure that candidates, to de-risk the process of recruitment.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
De-risk and help people show up as the best version of themselves is lights out. And the grand slam for me, I'll give physician-based advice, is that if you how are you going to onboard me, what developmental opportunities are in place, whether it's the organization or Newbrick or Furst, are you there looking out for my best interest to help me be the best person I can be here? The second component is if you have a game plan for this, do you have an appetite for physician leadership development in the organization as a whole? Your service line leaders, your medical directors, your vice presidents of medical affairs. And if not, can we talk about how I might bring that to bear? I think that is something that organizations are rapidly assessing right now. And I would say if you are seeking these roles, not only do you need to be developed, but how is your organization going to develop your succession?
Yeah, 100%. Because at many times I do see a disconnect below that CMO. Right?
Yeah.
Our book of business for physician leadership cohorts has actually significantly increased with the Newbrick partners to where they're coming in to help establish a platform for peer-to-peer. And then that aligns with the mentorship for rising stars, if you will. So I love seeing that the organizations are investing because like you said, you don't learn this stuff at medical school. You don't learn this stuff in residency, right? So it's kind of a la carte, or it's a really good organization that's helping you along the way.
That's right. So. That's right. Okay. Well, I made a commitment and I'm going to honor that commitment. And I have to, because we're about to wrap up, and I committed at the beginning of the podcast that we would share something, or rather that I would share something. And what I'm about to share is both a personal secret and a public announcement, neither of which has ever happened on the show before. There is a 0 chance that I would be hosting this podcast if it were not for Newbrick Partners, the companion piece to Furst Group. As mentioned during the introduction and mentioned by Rebecca as well, Newbrick provides that essential support to aspiring leaders. When I was a newbie or a baby executive, as some might say, it was the team of Furst Group that developed me, coached me, sponsored me, elevated me, and remarkably were cheering me on, even when I left the CMO role to teach at the student level and to the physician executive student level. And this may be shocking to all of you, given my small personality and not at all tiny ego, that I actually needed coaching and development. But because I was so bad and only half as good as everybody else, I needed not one coach, but 2 coaches to get me to that right level. One coach would have only brought me halfway up. So I needed 2, just to the normative level. And if it were not for Newbrick, and I'm going to shout out to Joe and Andy specifically, and you know who you are, I'm not sure I'd be doing anything right with my life right now. So for the first time ever on the podcast, the fire chief has an endorsement. A highly personal one, unsolicited, but highly deserved. This podcast endorses the companies of MPI, Furst Group, and Newbrick Partners. And, I know that folks love the 5 stars of Google, But the fire chief uses a proprietary rating system measured by chiefs, not stars. So when you need help and you feel like there's a 5-alarm fire going off in your head, call these folks. They will bring the right people to do the right things in the right way and set you straight. They have outstanding fire chiefs on their team. So Furst Group and Newbrick, you have earned a 5-chief rating by this podcast, and I endorse you. Rebecca, are you good with this?
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And this has been just a pleasure and honor to be able to share some gifts. Hopefully a few nuggets for the listeners.
Listen, if they don't like the nuggets, they're at the wrong buffet. That's how I'm going to tell it to you. I mean, that's it. So listen, thank you for being on the show. Totally amazing. Great insights, great insider view of physician leadership recruitment and all the value that you and your group and your team has to offer in this regard. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee.
You've been listening to the Fire Chief Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the Chief Medical Officer. If you want to learn more about what it is like to be a CMO, check out our website, thefirechiefcmo.com, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking with CMOs and CMO recruiters. So get out there, be a chief, and in the words of Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, let's be careful out